Hi, this is CAD/CAM Lessons channel, and in this video I will show you basics of FreeCAD. It will be the first part of this guide. FreeCAD is a fully free 3D CAD system in which we can create our own 3D models. We can use such 3D models, for example, for 3D printing, for collaboration with other people, or for collaboration with other CAD/CAM systems. We can save models created in FreeCAD in step format, and such models can be opened in other 3D CAD systems such as Fusion 360, SolidWorks or Autodesk Inventor, but also such models can be opened in CAM systems based on which we can prepare machining programs for CNC machines. Moreover, FreeCAD, in addition to 3D modeling capabilities, also allows us to prepare machining programs for basic 2D milling operations. That is, here we can prepare machining programs for CNC milling machines for operations such as pocket machining, contour machining, drilling or hole machining. Also, when it comes to FreeCAD's capabilities, they are really big, and juxtaposing this with the fact that it is a fully free system, we get a really powerful tool completely for free. And what's more, we can also use FreeCAD in paid projects. Here the license of this system doesn't limit us in any way. We can safely use this system in the company. We can install FreeCAD on any number of computers, and we can use this system freely. I will also briefly mention that in addition to such basic capabilities of this system, we can expand its capabilities with additional modules which are designed for such already very specific applications. And in this video I'm not going to discuss these modules, but if you go to Tools menu, here you can select Add-on Manager. And here you will see a window with add-ons, and by installing such add-ons we can further extend the capabilities of FreeCAD in the selected area. I'll close this for now. We don't use these add-ons and move on to FreeCAD, and FreeCAD is a 3D CAD system. It is a system for technical 3D modeling, and in 3D CAD systems, in this class of systems, we create parts with regular shapes with specific dimensions. That is, here we create such technical parts rather than freeform parts like figurines. And we can approach the creation of such parts in several ways, but one popular way of working in 3D CAD systems is to create a 3D model based on 2D geometry. That is, we create a 2D sketch on the basis of which, using 3D solid creation operations, we create a 3D solid. And in FreeCAD we can also work in this way. FreeCAD has more than a dozen different modules, and the module in which we work precisely in such a way that we first create a 2D sketch and then use operations to create 3D solids on the basis of 2D geometry is Part Design module. And click the left mouse button to activate this module. And this module is already active, but we still need to start a new project. And this we can do by clicking on this button. We can do it by selecting File, New, or we can just click the icon. These options will give the same result. Start a new project in the Part Design module. And here by default we have this combo view, and the Tasks tab is selected by default. This can be changed in the settings so that the Model tab is selected by default, and usually we will switch to this tab, to the Model tab, and here we have such a tree of operations, and by creating more elements of the 3D model, creating more sketches, adding more operations, it will appear here in this window. And one more important thing at the beginning of the work is the navigation style. I work on the Blender navigation style. Here we have several different navigation styles, and here the idea is that the navigation style is responsible for the way navigation in FreeCAD. Let's choose the Blender navigation style, and here as I hover with the cursor, such a window will appear in which we have hints on how the navigation in FreeCAD looks like. And so here, when it comes to such basic navigation, with the left mouse button we simply select and point to commands or geometries. Rotating the mouse wheel we can zoom in and out, and by pressing the mouse wheel we can rotate the view. And in a moment, when we create some geometry, I'll show you how it works. And now we will create a 2D sketch based on which we will later create a 3D solid. And when it comes to creating a sketch and starting to create a 3D model in the part design module, we can approach this in two ways. The first is that we simply select create sketch command and note at this point what the operations tree looks like. If I choose the create sketch command, now at this point select the sketch plane. Here we have the basic planes of the coordinate system: XY plane, XZ plane and YZ plane, and simply clicking on the selected plane selects that plane as the sketch plane. Here for now I will create any geometry and close the sketch, and notice how the operations tree looks now. The body type part has been created here, and in this body we have the coordinate system and the axis of the coordinate system and the planes of the coordinate system and the sketch that we created. Now I'm going to delete it, select it and press delete key, and we can also get to this stage by simply creating a body first. And we have a body created here, and the body is something like one single 3D solid. And now in this body we can create a sketch. Select a plane, create a sketch, and we have the same effect that we created before. And here in the part design module I usually start in such a way that I select create sketch and select the sketch plane and create a sketch. But you have to remember that selecting this option, it creates a body, and in this body this sketch is created. And why do I mention this? Because sometimes there are situations where we already have a body created, but for example sketch we create outside of this body, and then we cannot use this sketch in this part. In the later part of this tutorial I'll show you this, but for now we will start by creating a sketch and create a simple 2D sketch so that we can already make some 3D solid based on this sketch. And let's delete this and select create sketch, select sketch plane, and now as you can see here the commands have changed a little bit, and what is worth noting is the module has been changed to Sketcher. Previously we were working in the part design module, now the Sketcher module has been selected, and in this module we are just creating a 2D sketch that can be used to create 3D solids in the part design module. And here we have commands to create and edit 2D geometry, and let's select drawing a rectangle. And when it comes to drawing a rectangle, we draw a rectangle in such a way that we point to its two opposite vertices. That is, we left click the first vertex and left click somewhere else so that we determine the position of the second vertex. And we have created a rectangle, and here, as you can see, there is a rectangle icon next to the cursor all the time, and this means that the command to draw a rectangle is still active. We can create more rectangles, and when we finish drawing rectangles, we can cancel this command, and the command is cancelled by right clicking. Then the command is no longer active, but also when we have an active command and select another command, the previous command will also be cancelled. We can also cancel the command by pressing the escape key on the keyboard. And so, here I have 3 rectangles, and at this point these rectangles have no specific dimensions or position relative to the coordinate system. As far as FreeCAD systems are concerned, in such systems we create parts with specific shapes and with specific dimensions. That is, we precisely define the dimensions of such geometry, and we will do that in a moment. We will add the dimensions of a rectangle in a moment, but here I only need one rectangle and I don't need any other geometries. That's why we will delete these 2 rectangles, and to delete a geometry, we simply select that geometry and press delete key, and we can select the geometry in such a way that we simply left click on the geometry we want to delete. Here note that in the sketcher module, that is when creating a 2D sketch, as we point to the geometry, we don't have to hold down the control key. We simply left click on the geometries we want to select, and we can do it just with the left mouse button, or we can use the selection window and simply press the left mouse button to drag over the geometries we want to select. Now if I click somewhere with the left mouse button, all the geometries will be deselected. Here in this case I select the 2 rectangles, I press the delete key to delete this geometry, and now we are going to determine the dimensions of this rectangle. Here we have a horizontal dimension, a vertical dimension, a distance dimension, diameter and radius dimensioning, and angle dimensioning. And at first we specify the horizontal dimension, select this command and select the geometry you want to dimension, and here enter 100 millimeters and click OK. And now right click to cancel this command, and if you would like to move the dimension, then just grab the left mouse button and this dimension can be moved. And here the rectangle in this axis is already dimensioned, and this dimension we cannot freely change. Simply here we have defined a fixed value, fixed side length. This block is 100 millimeters long, and by grabbing any geometry of this rectangle we can change the second dimension. We can change the position of this rectangle, but we can no longer change the length of this side. This length is fixed, is 100 millimeters. Of course we can change it. Now if I double click here with the left mouse button, I can edit this dimension. I can type 150 here, and the length dimension of this side has already been changed. And here I'll go back to navigation for a moment. Rotating the mouse wheel, we can zoom in and out of the view, and if I grab some geometry with the left mouse button, I can move this geometry, and in this case I can also change the position of this rectangle. Okay, here it can happen that you accidentally press the mouse wheel and pressing the mouse wheel and moving the mouse rotates the view. But here we can easily return to the top view. We simply use this navigation cube and select top view here, and we can do the same by selecting one of the standard views. And okay, we already have this dimension defined. Now we will specify the length of this side, and we can also approach the dimensioning in such a way that we first select the geometry we want to dimension and then select the dimension we want to add. And here I first clicked on this line, then I select the dimension, and now I specify the length of this side, and here I type 70 millimeters and press enter. And okay, we have the dimensions of this rectangle specified. Now when I grab any geometry of this rectangle, whether it's a line or vertex, I can't change the dimensions of this rectangle anymore. The dimensions of the rectangle are already defined permanently, and these dimensions cannot be freely changed. We can only change it by editing the selected dimensions, but as you can see, I can still freely change the position of this rectangle relative to the coordinate system. And even though this rectangle already has its dimensions specified, its position is not yet fully specified, and in this case we can specify the position of this rectangle relative to the origin of the coordinate system, and we can specify the position of the geometry relative to the coordinate system or relative to other geometry. In this case we have no other geometry, so we can specify the position of this rectangle relative to the origin of the coordinate system. And for this we can use either constraints or dimensions. Constraints are something that defines the relationship between geometries and the origin of the coordinate system, or between one geometry and another geometry. And dimensions are, as we added here in the case of this rectangle, define the distance between the selected elements. And in this case we will add the distance of this rectangle from the origin of the coordinate system, and as in the case of dimensioning a rectangle, we will use the horizontal dimension, and now we will determine the distance of this side of the rectangle from the y-axis, and to do this select this vertex, select origin of the coordinate system, we simply left click and select this point. And here we can specify the dimension, that is, we specify the distance of this side of the rectangle from the y-axis, that is, we specify the distance in the x-axis. And here let's enter 20 millimeters and click OK, and let's do the same in the let's do the same in the other axis. Select this dimension, select this point and enter 20 millimeters. Okay, and what you may notice is that the sketch turned green, and here there was a message that the sketch is fully constrained, and this means that the dimensions and position of this geometry are already fully defined, and neither the dimensions nor the position of the geometry can be freely changed. That is, by grabbing the geometry we can neither move nor change the dimensions of this rectangle, and this is the state of the geometry that we are trying to achieve. That is, we are aiming for the sketch to be green so that the sketch cannot be freely changed. Because if the sketch is fully defined, we strongly reduce the risk of making any mistake or error by accidentally changing the geometry. And despite the fact that sometimes it may seem pointless to strive for a sketch to be fully defined, it is worth doing, because if we make such a habit of striving for a sketch to be fully defined, then later when creating more complex, more complicated geometries, we will have less risk of making any mistake, which in the case of more complex geometries can cause big problems and big wastes of time trying to fix the mistake. In the case of such simple geometries you may not see it, but it is worth trying to create such sketches fully constrained. And so, let's create another geometry here. Let's create a circle. Select Create Circle command, and when it comes to drawing a circle, first specify the center point of this circle and then the second point of this circle, and click the right mouse button to cancel this command. And here, as you can see, this circle is white, and this means that this circle is not constrained because we can freely change its diameter and its position. And here we also have information about 3 degrees of freedom, and here, as I clicked here, a circle was highlighted, and this means that this circle is just not constrained, that here we have degrees of freedom that need to be constrained in some way for the sketch to be fully constrained. And let's dimension this circle, but this circle is selected. Left click to deselect this geometry, and here we have commands to dimension the circle. We can constrain radius or constrain diameter. Let's select constrain diameter, select the circle and enter the circle diameter. Enter here, for example, 20 millimeters, and click OK. And here, as you can see, the number of degrees of freedom has decreased. We already have only 2 degrees of freedom. Right click to cancel the diameter dimensioning command, and while I can no longer change the diameter of the circle, I can freely move this circle in the workspace. And now we will determine the position of this circle relative to this point. First, select the horizontal distance, select this point and this point, and here enter 30 millimeters. OK, and select the second dimension, and here note that I'm not cancelling this command, I'm just selecting the next command, select these 2 points, and here enter 20 millimeters as the distance, and now right click to cancel the dimensioning command. And here, as you can see, after adding these dimensions, distance and diameter of the circle, the sketch is again fully constrained. And we will end this sketch and create a 3D solid based on this geometry. Close the sketch, and now based on this sketch we will add a solid by extruding the sketch. Sketch extrusion is such a basic operation for creating 3D solids in FreeCAD systems, and it simply works in such a way that based on the sketch we simply pull that sketch up and specify the height of the solid. And in FreeCAD it's the path command. Select this command. Here, as you can see in the preview, we already have a solid, and it's a solid with a height of 10 millimeters. Here type 30 millimeters and left click outside this box, and in the preview we can already see what this solid will look like. Click OK to approve, and based on this simple sketch we have created such a simple solid. And now notice that this sketch here in the operation tree is not visible because this sketch was used for the path operation. This is path operation and the sketch is in this operation. And now if you would like to edit this sketch, you need to expand the path operation. Here right click and select edit sketch, and now we can, for example, change the dimension of this sketch. I'll change this dimension from 70 to 100 millimeters. OK, click close, and these changes have also been applied to the solid. And if you'd like to change the length of the extrusion, right click here on the path operation, select edit path, and here we can change the length of the extrusion. Click OK, and changes have also been applied to the solid. And something like this is a huge advantage of parametric 3D CAD systems, because if there are any dimensional changes, these dimensional changes can often be applied to the 3D model very easily without having to create the 3D model from scratch. And this operation, the extrude sketch operation, is one of the basic operations for creating 3D solids from a 2D sketch. And just as in this case, we created the 2D sketch on the basic plane of the coordinate system, on the XY plane, we can also create such sketches on the faces of the solid. That is, we can simply select any face of the solid, and on this face we can create a sketch. Then simply this face will be the plane of the sketch, and we will come to this in the next part of the tutorial. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to this channel.